Daniel and Laura seemed like the perfect couple. 5 years together, a cozy apartment on the outskirts of the city, and shared dreams that once felt solid enough to build an entire life on. Marriage, a house with a garden, financial stability, and maybe children running through a quiet backyard on Sunday mornings. To anyone observing from the outside, they were the definition of modern stability, two professionals balancing ambition, love, and routine in a way that looked effortless. Daniel worked as a software engineer in a mid-sized technology company. His life was structured around logic, predictability, and long-term planning. He tracked expenses with precision, optimized savings, and believed that discipline was the foundation of security. Laura, a freelance graphic designer, lived in cycles of uncertainty and intensity. Some months she had multiple high-paying clients and felt unstoppable. Other months she struggled to cover basic expenses and lived with quiet anxiety she rarely showed. At the beginning, their differences felt complementary. Daniel provided structure, Laura provided creativity. Daniel built systems, Laura brought ideas. Together, they felt balanced, almost engineered to function as a single unit. But balance is fragile when one side begins to absorb more risk than the other without either noticing. Over time, subtle shifts began to appear in their relationship. At first, they were almost invisible. Small financial decisions, slight changes in tone, gradual expectations that didn't exist before. Daniel noticed some of them, but dismissed them as normal evolution in a long-term relationship. Laura noticed everything, and adapted faster than he did. The turning point began one evening that felt completely ordinary. They had cooked dinner together, shared wine, and watched a movie they barely followed. Afterward, they sat on the couch in a warm silence that felt safe, almost permanent. Laura broke it. "I've been thinking a lot about us," she said softly. Daniel smiled without turning fully. "Good thoughts or bad thoughts?" "Serious thoughts." That tone made him look at her. She moved closer, took his hand, and spoke slowly, carefully shaping each word as if she had rehearsed them. "I want us to be protected. Not just emotionally, but legally and financially. My lawyer mentioned something important. A cohabitation agreement. It protects both people in a relationship. It defines shared assets, responsibilities, future investments, everything in a clear way." Daniel frowned slightly. "That sounds complicated." "It's actually the opposite," she said quickly. "It removes confusion. It prevents misunderstandings. It protects what we're building. If we ever buy property or invest together, this makes everything fair and structured." He hesitated. "Do we really need something like that?" Laura didn't rush her answer. She studied him for a moment, then spoke with calm certainty. "People don't prepare contracts because they expect failure. They prepare them because they respect what they're building." Then she added something softer, almost intimate. "And because they trust each other enough to be transparent." That sentence settled inside him more deeply than the rest. The next day, they went to the notary. Everything moved quickly, almost too quickly. The lawyer spoke in formal, dense language that created the illusion of clarity while actually hiding complexity behind terminology. Words like joint liability, shared patrimony, future acquisitions, and solidary financial responsibility were used casually, as if they were universally understood. Daniel asked a couple of questions, but the answers were reassuring rather than clarifying. Vague in detail, strong in tone. Laura, meanwhile, seemed calm and confident. That alone reassured him. If she understood it, then it must be fine. He signed. Dozens of pages. No independent legal review. No second opinion. Just trust, compressed into ink and signatures. That moment, seemingly administrative, became the structural foundation of everything that followed. In the beginning, nothing changed. If anything, life improved. Laura became more affectionate, more expressive, more focused on their shared future. She talked about goals constantly. They opened a joint bank account. They created shared savings targets. They discussed investments and long-term plans with renewed excitement. It felt like progress. Like maturity. Like commitment solidifying into something real. Then came the expenses. At first, they were small and reasonable. A new laptop for design work. Software subscriptions. A tablet upgrade. A professional camera lens. "This is for my work," Laura explained each time. "It will help me get better clients." And each time, Daniel agreed. Because it sounded logical. Then the spending expanded. The charges became larger, less frequent at first, but heavier in impact. High-end equipment. Premium software suites. Expensive branding services. Professional consultations. Then came something more structured. A proposal. We should consolidate everything, Laura said one night while reviewing finances on her laptop. It doesn't make sense to carry separate debts. We can combine them into a single loan, lower the interest, and free up cash flow. Daniel felt uneasy immediately. That sounds risky. It's actually safer, she said without hesitation. Right now everything is fragmented. This gives us control. It simplifies everything. Then she added the emotional pressure, gently but effectively. This is what serious couples do when they're building something long-term. That sentence shifted the balance. So they signed again. A joint loan. This was the real structural turning point. From that moment onward, financial boundaries began dissolving. Credit cards multiplied. Expenses increased. Accounts blurred together. And every time Daniel questioned something, Laura had an answer ready. It's temporary. It's strategic. It's necessary for growth. You're only seeing part of the picture. When logic didn't work, emotion filled the gap. Why are you doubting me? Do you think I would hurt us? I thought we were a team. Slowly, Daniel stopped questioning. Not because he was convinced. But because repetition wears down resistance more effectively than arguments. Months passed. The numbers grew quietly at first. $20,000. $40,000. $60,000. Then over $85,000 in combined obligations. Daniel began noticing irregularities that didn't fit explanations. Transactions he didn't recognize. Withdrawals he couldn't trace. Transfers to accounts he had never seen. When he confronted Laura, she didn't react with panic. She reacted with control. You're overthinking things. You're stressed. You're focusing on the wrong problem. Then, softer. I'm doing this for us. You'll understand later. But trust, once questioned repeatedly, does not return to its original shape. It fractures. Then weakens further. The end came without warning. One afternoon, Laura sat across from him with unusual calm. I don't feel the same anymore. No argument. No build-up. No emotional collapse. Just a sentence that ended something they had built for years. Daniel was stunned. He searched for meaning, for context, for anything that explained the shift. But there was none. The relationship didn't collapse, it simply stopped continuing. Days later, the legal phase began. The contract activated. And everything that had been abstract became irreversible. Laura's legal claim was structured, precise, and aggressive. She demanded a large share of assets, financial compensation based on shared contributions, and distribution aligned with contractual clauses Daniel had never fully understood. And then came the realization. The debt responsibility was overwhelmingly on him. Over $85,000. Legally enforceable. Immediate. His life collapsed in controlled stages. First, accounts were restricted. Then credit access disappeared. Then collections began. He moved out of the apartment into a smaller place that felt temporary in every sense. He sold belongings, reduced spending to survival mode. Every aspect of life became smaller, quieter, heavier. Sleep became fragmented. Thoughts became repetitive. Regret became constant. Not just for trusting Laura, but for not understanding what trust had been turned into. Eventually, he sought legal help. Miguel Torres entered the case with calm precision. He didn't react emotionally. He studied. Page by page. Clause by clause. And then he found it. A flaw. Small, technical, almost invisible. But legally significant. A missing registration element. A notarization inconsistency. A procedural defect in validation. Contracts don't need to feel wrong to be wrong, Miguel said. That sentence became the first real shift in Daniel's situation. Then came Elena Morales, a forensic accountant. Her role was not interpretation. It was reconstruction. She traced every transaction. Every movement. Every pattern. And what emerged changed the entire narrative. Funds had been redirected in structured sequences. Expenses had been split to avoid scrutiny. Personal purchases had been presented as shared investments. Luxury consumption. Private financial planning. Hidden accounts. And most importantly, a business created during the relationship, funded with shared money, but registered solely under Laura's name. This was not chaos. It was design. The courtroom phase stretched for months. Each hearing added new layers. More documents. More inconsistencies. More clarity. Miguel dismantled the legal structure of the contract. Elena dismantled the financial structure of the relationship. Together, they reconstructed what had actually happened beneath appearances. And Daniel saw it clearly for the first time. Not the relationship he believed he had lived, but the one that had existed in practice. After months of litigation, the ruling arrived. The contract was not completely voided, but significantly limited. Key clauses were restricted. Debt responsibility was redistributed. Assets were recalculated based on verified contributions. Daniel recovered a significant portion of his savings. He was released from most of the debt burden. He gained partial ownership of the business created with shared funds. It was not full justice, but it was structural correction. When Daniel walked out of the courtroom, there was no celebration. Only silence. And awareness. He had lost money, stability, time, and emotional certainty. But he had gained something that could not be taken again easily. Understanding. That love without structure becomes exposure. That trust without verification becomes vulnerability. And that not all agreements are written with equal intention. Daniel did not return to who he was before. He became someone else. More cautious. More observant. More deliberate. Not because he stopped believing in people, but because he finally understood what belief costs when it replaces clarity. And some lessons, once learned, do not fade. They remain. After everything, Daniel still found himself replaying the beginning in his mind. Not to romanticize it, but to identify where things could have gone differently. He began to realize how easily emotional framing can override logical evaluation. How trust, when placed too early in a legal context, becomes irreversible inertia. He started reading contracts, financial agreements, even rental documents with a new level of attention. What once felt like unnecessary paranoia now felt like basic survival literacy. He understood that most systems are not designed to protect emotional certainty, they are designed to enforce documented reality. One evening, months after the case closed, Daniel sat alone in his new apartment. It was smaller, quieter, and simpler. There were no shared objects, no joint accounts, no overlapping responsibilities. For the first time in years, every financial decision belonged entirely to him. He opened his laptop and reviewed his budget. Not out of fear, but out of habit. The numbers were stable, manageable, controlled. And yet, what lingered wasn't financial recovery, it was cognitive reconstruction. He no longer saw relationships as purely emotional structures. He saw them as systems that included emotional, financial, and legal dimensions. And all three needed alignment, or imbalance would eventually surface. Daniel wasn't bitter. He wasn't angry anymore. He was precise. Careful. A version of himself rebuilt not from optimism, but from awareness. And in that awareness, something unexpected emerged. Clarity about what he wanted moving forward. Not perfection. Not control. But transparency. Because he now understood that the real danger was never love itself. It was assumption.
The journey doesn't end here. If you want to keep discovering more stories and surprises, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. I promise what's coming next will be even more exciting. See you in the next chapter.